Hey there, friends. David Paulides, K-Dam Missing Project. That is our executive producer, Huck. It is 23 degrees outside, and she's been outside for the last 2 hours straight, just moseying along, being happy out in the cold. And when I walk over to her, she's got 2 layers of coats here. I could pull the hair apart. You can't even see her skin. But the outside is cold. Huh? Yeah, it's cold. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. You love it, don't you? She loves being out there when it's like this. Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, she's a good girl. But when she comes in, I think she's warm. Because, 68 degrees inside is too warm for her. But she's a good girl. Yes. So, anyhow, we get on with the show. This is a special edition show. Something a little different. Change it up a bit. A couple shows ago, I did one on a story about giants. And there's a reason I did that, folks. There's a reason. This book, Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants. And if you've been following me, you know I've done 4 documentaries now. One of them is called Missing 411, the UFO Connection. And then I just did a show called American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster. I've gone to probably 500 conferences in my life over the years on a variety of things. And I've heard many people skip around the perimeter of these topics. And when it comes down to it, folks, many of these topics are all interrelated. If I told you, hey, it's all related. Well, if you watch my American Sasquatch movie, which you can watch it right now on Amazon, if you watched it, we explained how interdimensions are involved, UFOs are involved at Skinwalker Ranch, etc., etc. Now, what about giants? Well, there's people that think they lived underground. There's people who say they lived above ground. There's people who are saying they didn't live at all. Which is why we're here today. The people who said, Dave, this is a wasteful topic. What are you wasting your time on it for? Go on to something that's real. This isn't real. Oh, you are wrong. How do I know you're wrong? Because I wrote that book, Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants. I have a big interest in the topic. I have an interest in it because too many people have put the topic down. Now, for the people who have never read the Bible, you're behind. Because in the Bible, they talk about giants. Oh, well, Dave, are you saying that we should count on the Bible for history? Yeah, I do. And if you completely discount it, then hold your taters. What we're going to do is I'm going to walk you across the United States in this session. And we're going to talk about some of the stories of giants right here in the United States. Dave, that's not true. Hold on, cowboy. And away we go. The first story I'm going to talk to you about, November 22nd, 1851. It's in the Bristol Times. Did giants ever exist? The Bible mentions several races of giants, as the Rephaims, the Anakims, the Imins, the Zanzanias, and others. Profane history also mentions giants. They give 7 feet of height to Hercules, their first hero. The giant who was shown in ruin in 1735 measured 8 feet some inches. The emperor of Maximin was that same size. The body of Eurytes, according to the Greeks, was 11.5 feet, And Jacob Lemaire, in his voyage to the Straits of Magellan, reports that on the 17th of December, 1615, they found at Port Desire several graves covered with stones, and having the curiosity to remove the stones, they discovered human skeletons of 10 and 11 feet long. Ryland, celebrated anatomist who wrote in 1614, says that some years before there was to be seen in the suburbs of Saint-Germain the tomb of giant Foray, who was 20 feet high. Friends, again, this isn't going to be one short segment of about one article. I'm going to give you a whole series of them from across the US and the world. This one is from the UK. And what I want you to do is just keep an open mind. An open mind because some of the discoveries that are made are right here. This one's titled Prehistoric Remains in America. A large Indian mound has recently been opened and examined by a committee of scientists sent out from the Smithsonian Institute. At some depth from the surface, a kind of vault was found in which was discovered a skeleton of a giant measuring 7 feet 2 inches. His hair was coarse and jet black and hung to his waist, the brow being ornamented with a copper crown. The skeleton was remarkably well preserved. Near it were also found the bodies of several children in various sizes, the remains being covered with beads made of bone of some kind. Upon removing these bodies were seen to be enclosed in a network of straw or reeds, and beneath this was a covering of skin of some animal. On the stones which covered the vault were carved inscriptions, and these were deciphered will doubtless lift the veil that now shrouds the history of a race of giants that at one time undoubtedly inhabited the American continent. The relics have been carefully packed and forwarded to the Smithsonian Institute, and they are said to be the most interesting collection ever found in the U.S. Explorers are now at work at another mound in Bartow County, Pennsylvania. This is October 1st, 1884 in the Leeds Mercury newspaper. Tom Powell, who's in American Sasquatch, is one of the researchers that's also on this hunt with me. And he has documented the mounds across the United States where they found super unusual things underneath. Yes, the mounds. This is in the Geneva Herald, Wisconsin newspaper, December 31st, 1897. The Badger State, news of the week concisely condensed. Remains of a prehistoric man discovered. Cold weather is of great benefit to loggers new of the discovery of the Iron Belt. One of 3 recently discovered, curiously framed symmetrical mounds in Maple Creek had been opened and therein found the skeleton of a man of gigantic size. The bones measured from head to foot over 9 feet and were in fair state of preservation. The skull was as large as a half bushel measure. Some finely tempered rods of copper and other relics were lying near the bones. The mound from which remains of a prehistoric race were taken is 10 feet high. The mound is 10 feet high, 30 feet long, varying from 6 feet to 8 feet in width. Now this was in Maple Creek, Wisconsin, which is right there. I'm going to show you a map of the U.S. as we keep moving forward. This one, August 21st, 1902, Henry County, Ohio. Bones of a giant found near Sugar Ridge. The remains of some giant have been found on the Charles Whitmer farm west of Sugar Ridge. They were dug out of a large bank by William Jones while getting sand for the construction of a building. The size of the skeleton indicates that the bones must have belonged to a person at least 8 feet in height. They were found at a depth of 5 feet and are in fair state of preservation. Listen carefully. The upper jaw contains 2 rows of teeth, one back of the other, something which is very peculiar, as it is said that the very few persons are so well endowed with teeth. Yeah, I've talked to my dentist about that. He doesn't see any of this. Yeah. The bones were taken to the home of Mr. Whitmer. The skeleton was found in a sitting posture, a position at variance with that used by the Indians in burial. The skull is several inches larger than an ordinary skull, and though it probably had been in the ground for centuries, yet it is almost whole. There is no evidence of implements or other things having been buried in the same place, and vigorous digging in the same spot failed to reveal anything further. So that was in Ohio, and here's the location that it was at in Ohio. We're going to march around the U.S., like I said. I'm going to have a long look at that map in a second. August 8th, 1903, Holland, Michigan. Oh yes, we've talked about Holland before, haven't we? Bones of a human giant unearthed in Michigan, discovered in a mound near Pigeon Lake and brought to Holland, Michigan. William Stonesbury, John Owen, and Ralph Johnson, living near Port Sheldon, brought to this city today the skeleton of a man believed to have been 8 feet tall. The bones were discovered in a mound on the banks of Pigeon Lake, and when exposed to the atmosphere crumbled, but not so badly that the enormous stature of the dead man could not be recognized. The lower jawbone of the skeleton is 4 inches across, and the teeth, which are well preserved, are nearly double the size of the teeth of the average man. The skull was considerably broken by contact with the shovel in removing it from the mound. Other human bones were found, indicating that 2 persons were buried. Pieces of pottery were removed with the skeleton scarcely 2 feet from the surface. The attention of the men was attracted to the spot by a piece of pottery which extended above the surface of the ground. The mound has not yet been fully excavated, and there are numerous others in the vicinity. And that would be number 5 right here. Now, remember, I told you earlier that the Smithsonian took custody of giant remains. Remember that. Because there are dozens of other articles that I've found and written about and discussed in the past where they've done the same thing. And they 100% deny the existence of any of those in their custody. Why would they do that, folks? Be a critical thinker. I read every comment that was posted on the last segment I did about giants in Malta. You guys are very smart. There's a group of you out there, and I'm not dissing you at all, that maybe not as well read or maybe reluctant to believe. I think you're here because you believe me. Hold on. This is the Daniels County Leader, June 3rd, 1919. Headline, Bones of Giants in Narrows of Texas Rivers. Former Houstonian seeking oil finds skeleton of a man 8 feet tall, has enormous skull. What's Bigfoot? What's Bigfoot? 8 feet tall, enormous skull. Right? Now, I'm not saying these are. I'm saying that if you have a closed mind and you say, oh, this can't ever be true, I think that would be a mistake. Some of these may be, none of them may be, but I'm keeping an open mind. Texas, once the home of a human race of giants. In the dim ages of prehistoric past, the land was ruled by supermen 18 feet in height and weighing 2,000 to 2,500 pounds. 2,000 to 2,500. This is not the wild vagaries of an unbridled imagination. The bones of a human giant have been excavated near Seymour, Texas, in Baylor County. The discovery was made by W.J. McKinney, formerly of Houston, but now engaged in oil prospecting in the vicinity of Seymour. Mr. McKinney owns a home in Montrose. They actually list the address. I'll give it to you, 1007 Missouri Avenue, Montrose. The giant bones were discovered on the narrow watershed between the Brazos and the Wichita rivers. About 20 miles west of Seymour, these two rivers run so close together that a wagon will cover the watershed. Water from one rut running into the Brazos and from the other into the Wichita. Mr. McKinney sends the Chronicle an authentic account of this marvelous discovery, which opens a rich field for the paleontologists and gives the puny men and women of today a peep behind the curtain of time into a past that was once peopled with gigantic form. Mr. McKinney says, quote, I've made a rather peculiar discovery while excavating the bluffs of both the Brazos and Wichita rivers, which run so near together at a place called the Narrows, that there is scarcity room for two teams to pass between the banks of the two rivers. I have found the bones of a prehistoric giant. The man must have been at least 18 feet in height. The femur bone, which I found first, is 5.5 feet long. The skull, partly decomposed, is 5 or 6 times the size of an average human skull of today. I estimate that this man weighed 2,000 to 2,500 pounds, according to my deductions. He probably lived 2,800 years ago. What would that do to our history if 2,800 years ago there were giants running around in North America? Now you think, Dave, that's an idiotic idea. You know what? Dave, I thought you were a rational guy. Well, I think I am. And I think a lot of history has probably been kept to us for a variety of reasons. It is interesting to speculate how the average Texan of today would feel if he suddenly came in contact with prehistoric predecessor. The giant, where he is living today, could pick up an automobile and carry it across the street like a toy. His tremendous bulk would necessitate the building of a higher ceilings and doorways of dwelling houses. He could pick up 2 average-sized Texans and throw them in the air as a juggler. He must have had massive brain. He was no doubt a powerful thinker. He might have been a philosopher of advanced development. His material progress might have been greater than any of the history records. He might have built great cities where the forest Primeville now resounds only to the song of birds. It is possible that future discoveries will reveal some of his material accomplishments. At any rate, it is interesting to know that Texas was able to produce men of this type. Interesting. So that's an area just northwest of Dallas. Number 6. This is May 17th, 1929, the San Francisco Bulletin. Title, Pygmy Giants Bones Found in Cave in State. All you California and Nevada people, pay attention. Nevada had its petrified giants. California's race of pygmies is coming into its own, thanks to Dr. J. Kreck of the College of the Pacific in Stockton, which is still there, who has been digging up bones. And now it develops that the giants and the pygmies got together in what is now the motherlode country of California. It all happened thousands of years ago when the waves of the Pacific Ocean slapped at the hills of the Sierra Mammoths, and perhaps cave bears and saber-toothed tigers watched the sessions, or at least paleontologists say they lived in California. And maybe the famed Santa Barbara man referred to at bouts because of savants insist that the Santa Barbara relic lived 20,000 years ago, more or less. At any rate, giants, bones, and a race of animals, man-like in form, are reported by Dr. Kreck to have been found in a cave in Calaveras County. Calaveras County, famous for the frog-jumping capital of the world. And in the cave were bones of California pygmies. Of course, science must be shown, and probably it will be found, that the pygmies came long after or before the giants, but it is interesting to speculate on the possibility of the two races meeting. Perhaps it was a love feast over the cadaver of a mammoth. Perhaps it was a feast for all over battle with the victims being dragged into the cave to die. Perhaps the giants were like old Antaeus of Greek mythology, who was held in the air by Hercules until he succumbed to natural exhaustion. Details are this. Two Stockton men wandering about the Sierra found a hole in the ground. They dropped a pebble and found it needed 8 seconds to hit the bottom. Digging in, they found the bones. The pygmy bones are a race that once inhabited the San Joaquin Valley when it was a seashore. The giants were different. Huge skulls, much larger than modern brain caps, with enormous ear holes only an inch from the top of the skull, indicated, like of the Neanderthal race of Europe, the giants were not human, but an allied race. Rib bones as large as steers proved the lung capacity of the owners, and the wind supply would serve them little in running. The leg bones were said to be smaller than modern humans, despite the size of the rest of the body. College officials estimate it will be years before all details are checked on, but Calaveras Cave is expected to add materially to the modern knowledge of biology, anthropology, or both. Now, Calaveras County is just south of Sacramento in the Sierra Nevada mountains, in the foothills. Now, for all my Hispanic fans out there, I would not leave you hanging. No, I would not. I can't leave you out of the mix. You're part of North America. Title: Giant Human Bones Found in Mexico. July 19th, 1929, the Kansas City Journal. One of the most interesting and recent discoveries in Mexico is that reported by prospecting miners operating a new gold and silver mining district in the state of Chihuahua. According to one of the engineers who has reached Mexico City from the Sierra Madre range of the mountains, where the operation are being carried on, there have been discovered several human skeletons measuring 10 to 12 feet in length. They were all found in one cave, being quite intact. Pay attention. The average length of the feet was 18 to 20 inches. Where have we heard that before? The anthropological department of the Mexican government is planning to send a commission to investigate the discoveries. The investigation is expected to clear up the origin of the wonderful Indians of the state of Chihuahua. The skeletons were all found in a sitting position, shoulders bent forward and arms resting on upraised trees. Now, you heard them say that they were in a sitting position. Now you've heard this twice. Hope you're paying attention. Now that is Chihuahua, Mexico. Kind of close to the border here. And if you've noticed, I'm stepping forward in time. I'm slowly marching you guys up. July 28th, 1908, the Post Crescent in Wisconsin. Prehistoric skeleton unearthed. Massive human bones and Indian relics found near Rhinelander. That a human being of enormous size inhabit this section of the country ages ago was proved when a massive skeleton of an Indian was unearthed near Pelican Lake the other day. The interesting discovery was made by George Patton and L.H. Eaton, two Chicago tourists. That was Huck. I'm gonna counsel you on your behavior if you don't behave. These people are getting mad. They pay big money to watch me, you know. You better behave. She looks at me like I'm nuts. The skeleton was nearly 8 feet in height, and the arms extended several inches below the hips. Buried with the bones were a number of stone weapons and trinkets. Among these were a curious stone hatchet, a copper knife. Pay attention to that. How many times does copper come up as being an implement on the discovery with the skeleton? Several strange copper rings, and a necklace made of the tusks of some prehistoric animal. The skeleton is no doubt that of an Indian who was one of a tribe of giants who roamed this part of the state over 1,000 years ago. Now, this says 1,000 years ago. Can you imagine? It would turn our history completely upside down. But you notice nobody wants to talk about this. Why is that if it's in journals all across the United States? Right? Last year near Monaco, Monico, there was unearthed the bones of a human arm 3 feet in length. This former discovery goes to show that the Pelican Lake giant was not alone on Earth. The Chippewa Indians of our present day tell many legends regarding the prowess and the strength of the members of their tribe of generations back. One tale is of a big chief warrior who was over 10 arrow lengths high and had sufficient strength to uplift tall trees by the roots and hurl huge boulders through the air. Where have we heard that before? Of course, this is only an Indian fable, but it is generally known that the Wisconsin Indians were at one time a powerful race of men. The Chicago men will present the skeleton to some geological museum. Yeah, some geological museum. My guess, it probably went to the Smithsonian and we'll never hear about it or see it again. So, what I just told you about was number 9 right there. But that was the second one up in Wisconsin's area. Remember the Great Lakes? How the Great Lakes are important in all my research? There's a reason for this, folks. January 29th, 1929, the Passaic Daily. Bones of Ancient Giant. Now, amazing discovery in Oregon is of great interest to anthropologists. The discovery of bones of a human giant in Ellensburg is one of the most interesting anthropological finds made in the Northwest, according to L.L. Sharp, Chief of General Land Office. I just returned from Ellensburg, he said, where I had opportunity to view the bones unearthed. The skull, jawbone, thigh, and other parts of the largest skeleton indicated a man, to my mind, of at least 8 feet high. A man of his stature and massive frame would weigh fully 300 to 400 pounds. The head is one of the most remarkable I have ever studied among prehistoric skulls. It is massive with enormous brain space. While the forehead slopes downward somewhat, not averaging the abrupt eminence of our present race, the width between the ears and the deep, well-rounded space at the back of the head are convincing testimony of high intelligence for the primitive man. The cheekbones are not high, like those of the Indian, nor has the head any resemblance to an Indian skull. I am convinced that this skull is of a prehistoric man who was once a remarkable race of people who inhabited this part of America sometime prior to the Indian control. The bones were uncovered fully 30 feet beneath the surface. There is unusual gravel formation on the top, then the conglomerate, a stratum of shale, and in a bed of concrete gravel beneath the shale were the bones of the giant and of a smaller person. The shale would indicate tremendous age, perhaps more than, this says, 1,000,000 years, for the deposit in which the skeleton was found. But this I dream impossible, and presume that the bones were put beneath the shale by means of a tunnel perhaps, or some other system we don't understand. I cannot think it possible that a human being of the advanced stage indicated by this great skull could have existed at the period when the shale was formed. Portland, Oregon Telegram. Now, this is approximately where it was, right near the Oregon-Washington border. Well, I've got you guys thinking. Now, one thing I want you to understand. In the early 1900s, communication didn't flow like it does today. Not even close. Sometimes it took weeks for information to flow from the East Coast to the West Coast. So when people describe the instruments that these things are with, or the way the bones disintegrate, things like that, I tend to believe it. Bones of human giants found. December 4th, 1930, the county leader, Tucson, Arizona. An old cemetery containing the bones of 8-foot giants have been discovered on a ranch near Sayapa, Sonora, 300 miles south of the international border, Mexico. J.E. Coker, a mining engineer of the town, told of the discovery last night upon his arrival here for a visit. He said the skeleton found had been buried tier by tier. Carved native stone bracelets and the crudest kind of stone weapons and implements were found, Coker declared. Owners of the ranch were pushing further excavations when Coker left for Tucson. The top tier of the bones was found near the surface of the ground and not far from the Yaqui River. Yaqui. So, this is important. Here's the map of the entire U.S. So there are other, we just scratched the surface today, folks. Understand this. But along the West Coast, in Mexico, Texas, and around the Great Lakes. And in my book, I also covered cases up and down in New England. So if you think that it's all a grand conspiracy in the late 1800s and early 1900s, think again. To organize all these little hundreds of little newspapers all over and get them all to agree to lie and come up with these stories, you realize how ridiculous that sounds? Now, my concern is that, and I know others have the same concern, that these national museums are trying to suppress history. And I want you to be interested in this topic because it's part of our history. And it did exist. And in the future, I'm going to talk more about this because it's starting to be pretty obvious that everything's related that we're talking about. Everything. And once you get acclimated to the point that this is real, Bigfoot's real, UFOs are real, multi-dimensions are proven real by quantum physics, then you and I will be able to get on this journey and start to move a lot faster with a greater respect of each other and of the history that's suppressed. It's going to get more interesting soon. Oh, don't worry. We're going to get back to missing people real quick. But while we were on giants, I just wanted to hit on this and keep that topic alive in your mind. Thanks for being here. Be kind, be polite. Paulides out.